Hello, and welcome to the Concert Chat podcast of Reno Chamber Orchestra's 25-26 season. I'm your host, Catherine Beeson, and I'm joined by music director Kelly Kuo for the podcast today, which we are calling Give It a Quo. Because who doesn't think Kelly loves getting people to try new things? Nobody, that's who. Kelly, what are we going to be sharing about with our audience today?
We are talking about our fifth concert of the season in a subscription concert series. It's called All That Jazz.
Excellent. For those of you who are watching, you may also have noticed that Kelly and I each have a drink on hand. We're pairing a leaded and unleaded beverage with each of the subscription concerts and for the season. And since today we are exploring jazz and jazz-inspired music, we've leaned into the roaring 1920s. So I've got a sidecar. And Kelly, what are you drinking?
I don't know what the mocktail version of this is called, but it is a mocktail version of sidecar.
I feel like, I read that the sidecar is called that because you make it with a shaker, and you put it in ordinarily a coupe glass, which is kind of small. And so the leftovers would go into a little shot glass next to it, like a sidecar.
Uh-huh.
So, I don't know, you have a dried
orange slice.
A dried orange slice, and I have the ribbon here. We can be thinking about what to call the sidecar mocktail, maybe just based on the dried fruit option there. I don't know. Could it be like the Road Rash?
I'd go for that. I'd go for that.
Okay.
Cheers.
Cheers. Delicious. Okay. Also, for those of you who are watching, if you've seen the prior episodes, you'll know that we recorded on Zoom, and I'm just so excited to have you here, Kelly, in my home in Denver, Colorado. This was a really fortuitous thing because, of course, we're recording these in advance of the start of the season. It is now June, and we are thankfully in an air-conditioned space. It's very hot outside. But the reason that you're in Colorado is because
I get to make my debut at Central City Opera, conducting not really an opera, a crossover piece called Once Upon a Mattress, written by Mary Rogers.
Excellent. I think that it's such a great tradition having a Central City Opera here in Colorado, and it's your debut, right? So hopefully this will make a big splash, and you'll be back soon.
Hopefully so. The last time I was here was 2002.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
I remember being there to scout the operas, certain singers. I remember all three operas that I saw. I remember exactly where I sat in the balcony. It's really weird how things are imprinted in your mind, but that's one of those things. And finally, after 23 years, I'm back here conducting.
Oh my goodness. Well, this is a really wonderful experience for me to be in the same room with you again. I saw you a couple of years ago in Reno with a chamber orchestra performance, and then before that, it was a number of years when we were in college together. So, did you catch that number of years?
Yeah.
Number.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's a great number of years. So anyway, if you want to pause the show, make your own drink, the Road Rash.
The Road Rash, we're going to call it.
Yeah, or the sidecar. We're going to put the recipes on the RenoChamberOrchestra.org website. So definitely go and take a look there and get your tickets for the show. Right? Let's get started. I have a few questions for you, like an entire page, because this concert, when I saw what was on the program, I got very excited. I mean, I've been excited about all of the programs, but this one was really interesting. So it makes sense, I think, in a season celebrating America, that you would want to include jazz influences. But I wonder how you would bridge over to programming for a classical genre chamber orchestra from this idea of jazz that most people have.
I think a lot of people who attend classical music concerts regularly already hear a lot of jazz. Whether they know it as jazz or not is something, a different question, but I do believe that, especially the name George Gershwin, it has to be a household name. But if you've ever gone to a classical music concert, you've heard Rhapsody in Blue, and if not, you've heard it on a TV commercial or whatever. And so that's where I started, was the Porgy and Bess Suite, which is the final piece of the program, and an arrangement by Ian Farrington.
Yeah, I have something to add for our listeners, some really nerdy stuff a little later on when we speak about this. But I wondered if there was even also a micro theme or thread running through this program, or how you ended up choosing the specific composers and works?
The next piece on the program was sort of a tightrope because I had heard Claude Bolling's suite for jazz piano trio and chamber orchestra in recordings. I thought that is something I'd love to put on this program. And then it was a goose chase. Is that
Yes.
is an idiom? A goose chase? Wild goose chase.
Wild goose chase. There you go.
To try to figure out. By the way, that's another little thing of mine is that I mix up idioms all the time.
Well, I think it's very charming, but it can't be because of the road rash.
It can't be.
Because
it's
there's
way too
nothing
early.
in there.
Yeah, it's been way too early in this journey. But in any case, Wild Goose Chase because Claude Bolling passed away recently in 2020, and the recordings that exist, the live recordings that are on YouTube and whatnot, are performances that preceded that time.
Mm.
And so when I reached out to various places that had performed it, one was a conductor said, Claude Bolling actually handed me his own parts to this. He asked me to keep them and not to let them be performed.
So how did we get from that to now?
Well, I went to other orchestras that had performed it, just randomly emailing the orchestra, one of those info at whatever, blah, 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 just please, anyone would get back to you. And then I got back, heard from this place in Hong Kong. 2 places in Hong Kong had performed this, and they gave me the email address of the person who was in charge of the Claude Bolling band. Turns out this person no longer works for the band because the band disbanded after Claude Bolling passed away. So no response. But that orchestra in Hong Kong might have had PBS made of the parts in case we were looking for, the thing is the score exists. It only exists in libraries right now.
Oh, I see, okay.
It was published. They don't publish it anymore, but they exist in the library. So we've gone to the point of going through interlibrary loan to try to get a copy of the score, got a copy of the score to figure out what the actual resources were that required to get it and whether or not it was going to be possible for our soloists of choice to do it, because there are places that are marked to maybe be improvised and the recording doesn't necessarily go according to what's on the page, as what a lot of jazz musicians do. And our pianist, James Wynn, who's an amazing improviser in his own right, doesn't consider himself a great jazz improviser. So he wanted to make sure that he was going to be able to execute the piece at a high level that he was associated with. So wanted to make sure he had that. So basically then by the time we got access to the score and got the okay from our soloist, then we had to get the parts. We had a backup plan in Hong Kong, but then I reached out to another organization in, I think, Kansas or Iowa that had just performed it 2 years ago. And they got back to me and said, Bolling's brother is alive and he's the one, David Bolling's the one who's doing all the licensing now. And here's his address. He only answers in French. So immediate response back and forth, pay this much, sent you and voila, we had those parts. But that was a wild journey.
What a story.
Yeah, to make sure that we could have this piece and the parts available to us to perform for this audience. So audience is going to hear a piece that's almost never performed because it's so darn hard to get the parts.
Yeah, well, I mean, unless you are Kelly Kuo.
I am determined.
Yeah,
I had not reached my end of the line, although there was a point where we were budgeting like, okay, what's the backup plan in case this doesn't work through? And I had a backup plan, which was the Ravel Piano Concerto in G, because it's, of course, jazz inspired as well. But one that's much more common on programs. I thought this would be something that would be so ideal to also incorporate two more of our faculty at University of Nevada, Reno, who are amazing jazz bass player and percussionist. And I thought it would just be a great way to continue our relationship with UNR. They had those soloists. I really wanted to make it happen, and so glad that we were able to get to the finish line.
Way to stick to it. And is it just me, or did we call this Give It a Quo? I think we should have called this podcast Quo for It because of all your effort. I'm just saying, and I really haven't had that much to drink from my sidecar. I'm going to take another little sip right now.
Well, the other thing about this piece is that it's a long piece. We're only doing the last 2 movements of it. The entire piece is about 1 hour long.
Okay.
So we are doing the last 2 sections. Starts with an aria and ends with a brillante section. and I should say Bouillon because
Mhm.
it's in French. Pardon me, sorry, Mr. Bowling. And so it's a good 20 some minutes already, those last two movements, and that'll be just like another concerto. in
That's
the
so
middle of that,
nice.
So it's great.
And I know you mentioned the Ravel, and that's a great, that would have been a nice choice. I'm sure everyone would have loved it, but this piece is specifically for chamber orchestra and jazz trio.
Correct.
So then it really lives at that intersection of this entire program. You know,
Mhm.
we've got the Reno Chamber Orchestra specializes in this kind of so-called classical genre, right? And so you have the mixture of these two coming together with
Right.
this jazz program.
And I don't know about you, but when I was in school and college, our music history teacher had Claude Bolling's Suite for Flute and Jazz Piano.
Mhm.
First and foremost in all of his classes, I remember being taught that piece. And so getting to bring this piece into the limelight again with now a different piece, one that was written just a few years after that.
Mhm.
But what's curious about that trio, the piece for flute and jazz piano, is
Mhm.
that it made it on Billboard
It did.
for a long, long time.
Yeah, I mean,
1975.
that was one of those kind of breakout pieces of music that people just couldn't get enough of, at least in the United States, and probably everywhere. But Billboard, right? That's a U.S. measurement.
Mhm.
And Bowling was French,
Mhm.
right? And I think he wrote the flute piece for Rampal. Is that
Mhm,
correct?
That's correct.
So it really was, that sort of doubled down on the sort of nice surprise that Americans found it really,
This was at a time when Hooked on Classics was also
Oh,
really
yes.
hot, where you
Yeah.
blended rock music or
Uh-huh.
something that was much more popular with the classics.
Yes.
I can still sing you Hooked on Classics from beginning to end, almost. No, I can't. I shouldn't even doubt myself. I
Are
know.
you sure there's no alcohol in your drink? I think maybe I'll just swap when you're not looking,
Yeah.
and then we'll have an outtake of you singing the entire Hooked on Classics.
Sorry,
It'll be
the
longer
Tchaikovsky
than the
piano
actual
concerto, yes,
podcast.
Yes, exactly. But anyways, it's a blend. It's crossover. True
Yes.
crossover of styles. And Bolling's is exactly that. This piece that he wrote a few years after the suite for flute and jazz piano is a blend of all types of American music, quite honestly, including jazz, which is rooted very much here in the United States. And what I love about it is that it also incorporates the concerto grosso form that we've been talking about in the earlier podcasts.
Yes.
This Baroque concept of having a larger group and a soloist group that's smaller within the middle and having a conversation between those
Each
groups.
of the groups,
That's
yeah,
right. And
yeah.
so that's what this piece also borrows upon.
I think it's just going to be a really wonderful thing to see the orchestra inhabiting that space as well. I mean, Reno Chamber Orchestra, I was really immediately struck with the amount of flexibility that the chamber orchestra shows. And any chamber orchestra is going to have a little bit more sort of muscular chops because the focus is on individual players in a different kind of way than you would have in a large symphony orchestra. So players have to be a lot more flexible and really feel that they're playing large scale chamber music. But then on top of that, to be able to play in so many different genres and eras and change on a dime, I think it's a testament to the strength of the ensemble and to what you're bringing as music director. So this will just be another really great check mark in that column, I
Right.
think.
So we have as our soloists, we have of course Jim Wynn, who's our principal pianist. We have Andy Hegland, and we have Hans Halt joining us, and it's just going to be a grand old time.
I love that. And so we did skip over, I think, are you starting the concert with the Andante movement of Florence Price's string quartet,
We
just
are.
Arranged for chamber orchestra?
It's going to be arranged just for string orchestra, actually.
Right, okay,
Mhm.
okay.
Correct. And that is out of a desire to bring Florence Price's music into the conversation with the chamber orchestra, because she didn't write a whole lot for chamber orchestra. She wrote in larger mediums as well as smaller mediums. But she was such an important component of American music at her time. There's so much about her that's coming to the forefront only basically after 2009. This is the story about Florence
I
Price's
do,
music?
because it sounded very similar to your, tale of woe, trying to find the bowling piece and trying to find who's in charge of the licensing and all of that. that so much of her music was found basically discarded. It had been in storage in a house that had
It was her old summer house.
Yes, and I think it was a couple that had bought the property and they were just sort of cleaning it up and were going to renovate it.
Exactly.
And there was holes in the ceiling. Rain had come in. It was just in a state of disarray because people had been sort of camping in it at one point, and they found a whole treasure trove of her writings and her manuscripts
With her name signed on them.
which they could have just chucked, but somehow saw the value here and contacted someone who'd contacted another person.
Thank goodness for Google. 'Cause
Right?
That's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
They saw obviously someone. They had to look it up before they decided to discard it. If it was not anyone that popped on the radar, they probably would have been in the trash bin.
Right.
But because all of a sudden Florence Price's name in Chicago especially popped
Yes.
up big, it's just amazing that going back, it took even for her name to be that big in Google. That meant that someone had to have done a doctoral thesis or something very important after she passed away, because after she passed away, she was basically discarded as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing that I speak about often is this how tenuous it is in all of the arts but especially with music, it's so ephemeral, right? If there's no documentation of a performance, if there's no recording that was made, then you don't have actual people hyping you after your death, right? Then you can very easily fade into the background of memory, and when those memories fade, everything is gone. I really I wonder so much if anyone out there could apply their skills to find Julia Perry's viola and piano sonata.
A few moments later.
Julia Perry. We don't have to talk about this on the actual podcast, but it is really true. I would love for someone out there to put all of their library science and super research efforts into finding Julia Perry's viola and piano sonata that she won the Boulanger Prize for. What the heck? We know she won the prize. Why it wasn't published is beyond me to understand.
Why doesn't the Boulanger Institute have a copy of the thing that they awarded?
I know, and so it's got to be in some weird folder or stuffed in the back of a thing, or
Very sad.
it hurts my viola heart. Okay, but more on that later.
Florence Price.
Florence Price. So it is really amazing, actually, that her works were found in that manner. And I don't actually know if the string quartet was among those. I think it was.
It exists.
And so, but had we already
Had it known? I don't.
I know
remember the
there were
question.
some violin concerti and things like that, and I mean, just incredible stuff that was found there. But because of that discovery, then people became really, really interested in her work, and there was a resurgence of interest in a really wonderful kind of way that caused all of her works to sort of come to the fore again. And she was someone who enjoyed a fair amount of success in her lifetime, and to have it fade away after her death is really, it's pretty shocking, I think. As a living, breathing, currently performing musician, it really makes me feel extra zealous about making sure to be a good steward.
Right. Given all the stuff that she was fighting at the time, from racism to sexism, this woman grew up in Baton Rouge under a great, relatively wealthy family that could send her to private school. In fact, where William Grant still went to school. She went to school. That was the same boarding school. And then she ended up going to NEC, New England Conservatory, and then moved back home because that was what women were expected to do at that time.
Right.
And it wasn't until her father passed away that she married the lawyer who happened to be managing her father's estate. But that's another thing. And then she spent her summers in Chicago, basically learning more how to do composition, because she got her degrees in piano and organ, right? So she's there making an effort to learn more and put her thoughts down on paper. Then after her divorce, she's raising kids. She's in her 40s, my God's sakes, when she's writing the string quartet.
Right.
And it wasn't even until a couple years after that that she wrote the piece that would basically be her breakout piece, her first symphony.
Right. And I understand it too that she, at one point, because of her Boston connection through New England Conservatory, was so frustrated that she couldn't get more recognition. The Chicago Symphony had already performed her first symphony, and so she contacted Kusevitsky, who was conducting the Boston Symphony at that time, and wrote him this heartbreaking letter that you can find online, in which she, said that basically what we've been talking about. If nobody performs the works, then the public can't, judge whether they're, worthwhile. She needs performances. She needs some type of hype or sponsorship from someone that, people trust to give a good critique. And that only happens if a performance occurs. And just that she wanted to be, she knew that what the blocks were, that she's a woman of color, and that she wanted to be judged on her merit, and she didn't receive a response from him, and that just must have felt very lonely, but she persevered, she continued writing after this, like she wrote more. So I just think she's a really interesting person to study. And thankfully, we have much more music than we thought we did from her. And
the music itself is like really accessible.
It is,
to the ear.
which is, I understand, and maybe I'm wrong, but you can correct me. I understand that was actually part of the problem, was because her music was accessible and easy on the ear, that she wasn't considered avant-garde enough or boundary pushing. She wasn't a real composer, and that kind of attitude is so interesting to think about now, when we have this idea that, oh gosh, new music, it must be very prickly, and so I want something that sounds good, right? And here she was getting judged for music that sounded good.
Right. I mean, growing up in a time of Dvorak, and who was also inspired by the African American spiritual, as her own music was, infusing. I don't know. It seemed like people were looking for an excuse not to program this music.
I mean, and not even looking that hard for an excuse if they don't just answer. They don't even bother to answer the letter. It was an interesting time for a lot of people to try and find a way in lanes that they don't normally occupy or aren't expected to occupy, and she just really went for it. And was so influential in her community. Really, part of the Harlem and Chicago Renaissance. So I love the idea that the string quartet will have this kind of fuller sound, and that Andante movement is so interesting. I feel like it is, when I listen to it, I hear an American sound, and I hear these sort of jazz-ish kinds of harmonies, but it sounds less jazzy to me than it sounds like it's derived from, well, you mentioned Dvorak, like this bohemian European kind of style. It has this sort of minuet and trio kind of feeling to it. That B section material has all these, quick, like sudden tempo changes, and it's humorous and kind of cheeky. And then the outer sections, the A sections, are so beautiful.
They are. It's obviously infused with someone who knew about history and knew what they could learn from history, and then infuse it with their own. But there's no question that there's American sound in that music.
So we go from this American sounding, European derived, classical-ish music. I say ish only because it's American and we can put any spin on it we want, because the New World. Hey! We go from that to Claude Bolling's piece, a French composer who's mostly in the jazz realm, who's writing this kind of crossover stuff that is sort of concerto grosso-ish. And then what comes next?
Arturo Marquez.
Yes.
We do his danson number 4, which is not his most popular piece. His most popular piece is the second danson. He's a living composer and Mexican. It's in this concert only because it comes from popular music, which I consider jazz to be popular music as well. He grew up in a musical household. His dad played in mariachi bands, so he was very much infused with popular music.
Yes.
And so when he set out to write the set of, I think, 8 dansones, is that how you say plural in a danzón in Spanish? I think so. Danzones?
It is now.
It is now.
Keep drinking.
Okay, very good. Cheers. And each one is based upon this danzón, which is a dance form that's derived from a Cuban
Yes,
dance, right?
yeah.
And this was a dance that he would hear in Veracruz because there were these bands that were performing these Mexican Cuban communities
Mm-hmm.
that were having these dances outside. I've been to Puerto Vallarta and Cabo, and you go into these public dance squares and there's dance music going on all the time.
Oh, nice.
And I can totally imagine that Marquez is out there listening to this music being performed. And this particular danzón is like, I think there was something someone described like watching old people dance this slow, intimate music late at night in Veracruz in these public squares. And that's what this music is. It's a little quirky because it's like groups of 9, groups 5 and 4, and alternating that. So there's a little bit of a lilt to that that's very, very specific to this dance. And it's just great music.
Well, I have to say, one of the things that I think is pure genius is that Marquez chooses the second best instrument in the world after the viola, the bassoon, to start the piece with this beautiful kind of languid solo, and it just lasts a deliciously long time. And just about the time I was, when I first listened to it, just about the time I thought, wow, this is really very, bassoon concerto-ish, right? How forward-thinking to have the bassoon just take such a prominent role in this entire piece. It switches over and we have a new solo from another wind instrument, and then you begin to see that he's given solos to so many.
Including a soprano saxophone.
Yes, and so it really highlights the individual members in a similar kind of way that you might find in a jazz ensemble when they're when it's time to take the solos. And you were saying it does feel like a very kind of stylized, slower dance that you might expect. If not very well developed sort of ballroom, movements, than just someone who's been steeped in this movement their whole life. Like you mentioned, this sort of you get this image of older people doing this dance. And then I guess the party really gets started, and it gets a lot peppier. I think that too. At this point, we've started the concert with strings only sound. We've gone to the bowling piece that has a piano involved, and now it's very prominent, the piano part in these danzones. Danzones.
Danzones, yes.
Okay, I'll stick with danzones, and you can stick with danzones, and one of us is correct.
Absolutely.
And then maybe we can, later in the podcast, we can arm wrestle. I'm kidding, but just to have the sort of the landscape of the program change from something quite intimate and still very expressive to this much fuller sound with the jazz trio in the middle of the full sounding chamber orchestra, to now this these solos that are going to just sort of pop through the texture here and there. And then the sound of the clave is so distinctive. I didn't realize at first, you mentioned the uneven rhythms. I didn't realize at first that it was this sort of checkerboard 5+4. And I couldn't figure out why the usual,
Like in Caravan.
it doesn't quite do that. It's so close. And then it just kind of hiccups a little. And so I think that will be really, really interesting for people in the audience too that have a little bit more familiarity with this kind of rhythmic pattern, to just feel that little stretch, that little extra stretch. I loved it. I thought it was really, really charming. I couldn't stop listening to it.
It needs to be performed more. I mean,
Yes.
the second one is done so much
It
in
is.
Pop's concerts,
Yeah.
and it's just like, it's so popular that I just was so curious why this fourth one was not performed.
It's a much more intimate feeling piece, and it lasts the intimate portion and the slower tempo last a little bit longer.
Mm-hmm.
But people seem to really love Bolero, and that is just one huge long crescendo. So with lots and lots of solos.
With no tempo changes.
No tempo changes. I think Marquez has upped Ravel in this way. Well, I'm just more arm wrestling in our future.
Very good.
I think that the Marquez is a really interesting addition in terms of stretching the sort of genre blurring aspect of this program, this particular program. But then we come to the most sort of classical version of jazz on the program with Gershwin's Porgy and Bess Fantasy. And so it's a fantasy arrangement, and the audience is going to hear sort of, highlights. It's a little bit of a collage, a musical collage from Porgy and Bess, the opera. And there's just so much to love about it. And the fantasy arrangement, I think, really brings a new way of listening to it. And so I wanted to just ask you if you could speak a little bit about what makes something a fantasy on the original versus just an arrangement of the original.
That's a good question, because there are a lot of versions of Porgy and Bess. Richard Rodney Bennett's version, it's of course very, very popular. A lot of them use choirs, some of them use soloists, and this one is an arrangement I like quite a bit because Ian Farrington, whose arrangements we've used quite a bit over my tenure, is such a creative thinker, and he does something that none of the other ones do. The other ones are basically all about the most popular tunes, right? And he will switch, and those will be in whatever order suits the arranger's fantasy, I should say, as opposed to this fantasy of Ian Farrington, which is actually very much respecting the dramatic arc of the piece. So the things that he chooses to use are in direct order.
Oh, okay.
So you can follow the dramatic arc of the opera through his fantasy.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And he includes version, Jazz Bo Brown at the beginning is almost always cut from productions because it's quite a long piece. And if you don't know Porgy and Bess, the entire opera, it's a long piece without cuts. And the versions that are performed now usually cut at least an hour out of the piece.
Oh my goodness, I didn't know that. A whole hour.
Yep.
Wow.
There's an entire, the musical Stomp?
Yes.
With all percussion instruments, right?
Yes.
Using garbage cans and whatnot. The cleanup after the hurricane is an entire ballet of sweeping up that's always cut.
I've never experienced
It's
that.
like don't. It's an entire ballet, a stomp ballet that is always cut. I've never heard it, and I'm not. And you understand why, because at that point you want to get dramatically to it. But it's such a forward-thinking composition. Part of the composition I just wish could be seen more. But in any case, and Porgy and Bess is a piece that is really close to my heart. It's a piece I've conducted the most in my life. I started out conducting it on tours in, we started in Germany, in I think Munich, and we went into Hamburg, then the Canary Islands, and I made my debut at the Lyric Opera Chicago, stepping in with no rehearsal.
Oh my
Porgy
goodness!
and Bess
Wow. Okay.
For 2 performances, and it's a piece that I was taught by John DeMaine, who recorded a very famous Grammy-winning recording with Houston Grand Opera, and I love it so much, and I wanted to put something on the program that represented that love. The one thing I am so sorry about is that I cannot conduct this program.
Yeah, I noticed that you were. I mean, I see your fingerprint all over this. And then there's a guest conductor. But this is what stewardship is about, right? And curating.
And I couldn't just put any conductor because Porgy and Bess for me means so much. And I've seen a lot of non-opera conductors take that piece and sort of warp it beyond what the actual opera is and the storytelling. And I wanted someone who knew the opera. So Donald Lee is a young conductor, and he was my assistant conductor in Des Moines Opera a few years ago when I conducted Carmen. He went through the Lyric Opera Chicago Young Artist Training Program, the Ryan Opera Center, as the first conductor pianist. I can't remember what his position was, but He's a terrific pianist, based in gospel, played in churches, but has a really serious mindset as a serious musician. And he started conducting. He actually went back to school, San Francisco Conservatory, to do his master's degree in conducting, while also continuing to be a part of this renaissance of Black music that's coming around in the classical world. And he's such an advocate for that. And of course, he assisted the production of Porgy and Bess playing piano in the pit in Des Moines. So he knows the piece well. And that's where I feel like I could hand this concert over to him and feel good about both Porgy and Bess being in good stewardship, but also giving an opportunity to another young conductor who might not have had opportunities.
And that is such an important thing to do. You know, I mean, it's hard, I think, when we are so invested in this, to step to the side and make space. But this is something that you're doing so much of in one way or another, no matter where you are, but definitely in Reno. And we're going to get into that a little bit more, I think, in episode 6. But even just the mentorship that you do is already enough, and then to really take something that is so personal to you and find just the right person to leave it in good hands, I think it's a testament to the character that you bring to all of the work that you do with Reno Chamber Orchestra. And I would assume too that the Chamber Orchestra really can benefit from being led by someone with a different style and a little different approach. Going back to that idea of the kind of musculature of the chops of the organization or of the orchestra, you have so many players that have to come together and make this combined sound. There's a lot of trust going on, and when there's somebody different on the podium, it can really cause a lot of good and bad growth moments, you know. But when you have a season of 6 concerts, you know, it's I would think that it would be really difficult to sort of pick and choose which ones you might not be able to you know, be the focus of the ensemble on the podium, you know. So that's great. I hope people are excited about seeing somebody a little different and knowing what you've put into the selection of leader, you know. That's awesome. I don't know anything about him, so thank you very much for you know, introducing him.
I think the world will be hearing a little bit more about him soon-ish. He was a recent winner of the Schulte Career Assistance Award for young conductors. I think there are 25 chosen. I was personally one of the winners of a Career Assistance Award that very, very first year. So we weren't the grand prize winner, but we were the next group. And so both Donald Lee and actually our assistant conductor, Yuna Joan, were both awarded one of those Career Assistance Awards from the Schulte Foundation this year.
That's incredible. That's incredible. And you had already selected the 2 of them?
Yes.
See, there's something in the water, or I don't know, something in the sidecar and the, what do we call it, the road rash?
The road rage.
Road rage? Did you call it road rage?
Road rash.
Road rage.
Apparently there is probably alcohol in those, because I can't remember.
I mean, listen, we made these together. I was watching him. He did not put any alcohol in it. Mine, I do have the leaded and unleaded. Well, so this fantasy arrangement, I have, I know I mentioned something at the very top of our time together when you mentioned the Gershwin, that I wanted to just share. This is an extra nerdy thing, but I think maybe I'll just go ahead with my, you know, the viola is always going to be the best instrument. The bassoon is a close second, such a close second. But in terms of the Gershwin, there's a keyboard element in this fantasy, and then also I don't know how many people realize a lot of the excitement of the opening comes from the really crazy xylophone solo. Well, it's not really a solo, but all of the notes that the violins are playing, all of them are being played by also the xylophone player. And it is just, it's a great opportunity, I think, for listeners of the Reno Chamber Orchestra to really find, because it's a chamber orchestra, you can easily see the percussionist, and it's just a smaller setup, and so you can really key into this. But there is an extra excitement to the sound with this combination that Gershwin used of strings and a mallet instrument, a very kind of hard and very kind of bright sounding mallet instrument. And so I love that glockenspiel a little bit later, not too long afterward, that just brings a kind of a ringing effect. So if you want to be dazzled at the concert, I would say definitely keep an eye on the percussionist, and no pressure, percussionist, whoever you
It's
are.
always on the audition list for percussion.
It is.
And it was on ours as well.
Yeah, and it should be, because it's tricky. It's really tricky. There's a whole lot of besides just a lot of notes, there's a lot of precision that has to happen, and they are kind of jazz licks that are all sort of strung together.
There's a little story behind that too. What it's trying to describe is Porgy's cart going over the cobblestones of Charleston.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Yes, it's completely describing his journey, his daily journey to go to where he was beg for money.
Wow. I never knew that, and I hear it in my head right now.
It's like,
And
you
it
totally
is,
see
it's
it.
really
It's metal cart.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Wow.
And this orchestration is very much more representative of what you would hear on Broadway, because it's
Yes.
much more slimmed down. You just have
Yes.
the full symphonic orchestration, and it's a little bit more raw.
Uh-huh.
I mean, Porgy and Bess had a long run on Broadway
Yes.
for its time, and can you imagine singing that show 8 times a week?
No.
It's just
Yeah, it's
incredible.
a lot. There's a lot going on. But you said that it's a pared down sound. I think that brings more excitement, but also the lushness is still there.
Absolutely.
In Bess You As My Woman now, in Summertime, it's just it's the arrangement, the fantasy arrangement is really, really very
Faithful.
well done, and it is very faithful. And the size of the chamber, it's not the size. Kelly, is what you do with it.
Mm-hmm.
Just saying.
Big experiences.
Yes. So I think it's definitely going to be a delight for everyone to finish with this powerful work after really sinking into all of these sort of jazz and jazz influenced sounds. But if any of you listening and watching right now are gnome loving people who are also really still feeling a heart connection to that quaint time of 2020 when everyone was being really, really creative online, you'll want to go to the YouTube account of Rocco Luigi Bitondi. Rocco Luigi Bitondo. He's an Italian percussionist, mostly in the opera world, and he just was stuck at home in his apartment in Italy when everyone was trying not to get COVID. And he made a ton of percussion videos using his tiny gnomes. And one of them, he has a tiny xylophone. One of them is the whole Porgy and Bess opening. And so if you want to get silly, you can go to that YouTube.
I'm going to do that right after this interview.
Yeah, there's an order of operations. We have to arm wrestle. You have to sing the entire Hooked on Classics. Then we're going to go see the YouTube. Okay, I'm just saying.
Task list.
Yes, look, I'm delivering facts. The viola is number 1, the bassoon is number 2, the xylophone is a very close number 3. Those are facts. And then also, gnomes. Gnomes are great. I don't know why I'm saying
Silent G's are great.
Maybe there was more in this than I thought there was. Okay, listen, I think this program is so strongly curated, and people are going to love it no matter what. There's something really beautiful about the progression from that string orchestra sound in this almost classical but not quite, and sort of jazzy but not quite way that you open with Florence Price, to then go from that to this really big, brilliant,
boisterous, yeah.
Yes, and very boisterous piece by Claude Bolling that really shows off the orchestra and your jazz trio. And then to kind of calm it down with a little chill Cuban-Mexican kind of combo with the Marquez, and finish with, the Cliff's Notes version of Porgy and Bess. This sounds like a concert that would last for 3 hours, but it is a normal length.
It is a normal length.
Yeah, and so it is something for everyone, and it's in the pops realm, but it is done definitely with a very fancy bow tie,
Love it.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's great. Now, what do you hope Reno Chamber Orchestra fans will take away from this program?
Joy. Because every single one of these pieces should make you smile in some way, shape, or form, just because it's just good music.
That is great, and I can't add anything more to that. That's a fantastic thing to hope that people will leave with joy, and all the music is really great. Well, any final thoughts or anything that left that you'd like to add?
I so wish I could conduct this concert, but if there was any other person who I would like to conduct this concert, he will be conducting it.
Well, I think that this is a great show for people for so many reasons, not the least of which is that they can see someone that you've approved, knowing what a strong heart connection you have to Porgy, someone that you've approved and have really lifted with your mentorship to step onto the podium. And I'm sure that the orchestra is going to love every single one of these pieces.
I think so too.
Yeah, it'll be so nice to hear each of the soloists in the Marquez and then hear the whole sound come together again for the Gershwin at the end as well. Well, Kelly, thank you so much for spending the time with me. It's so nice to have you in my home. This is a real treat.
I can reach out and touch you, actually.
You can, actually. Oh, okay. It's not an arm wrestling. We're totally friends. It's going to be fine. And thank you for insisting that I take the sidecar so that I can just lose all track of ability to speak English. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
But cheers to a great concert.
Thank you.